Okay, can I ask for my presentation? Okay, thank you. Hello everyone, my name is Maciej Kostro. I know that this is very difficult to pronounce, so as my colleague from EFMA told, I can tell the same thing. Please remember, I'm the Polish API guy. Okay, so I think I'm representing Polish Bank Association, which is a, of course, association of a bank, and I'm responsible for Polish API project, which is a project intended to establish a standard of the specification of the interface to connect banks with third parties based on new regulations, I mean PSD2, Payment Services Directive, amended, and related acts, especially so-called RTS, regulatory technical standards, which define the means of communication, of secure communication between third parties and banks. Our initiative was established about 1 year ago, and the main aims of this project is to create a foundation for further financial innovation on our market, and to reduce the cost of implementation of the PSD2 for both for banks and for third parties. And for sure, we are assuming the permanent development of this standard. I would like to stress that our project was from the very beginning conducted with the participation of banks, of course, but also non-bank payment institutions, fintechs, and other market organizations, like, for example, organization of insurers, organization of IT vendors, and non-banking payment institutions. So this is very important because we could take into account the different approaches to issues raised together with new regulations. Let's have a look at the regulatory context of our project. So we all know the PSD2 dates. I think we are at the moment at the beginning of let's say transitional period. At 13th of January, PSD2 take into force. But all, let's say, technical issues related to secure interfaces between banks and third parties are connected with RTS, regulatory technical standard on secure, on strong customer authentication, which act will probably be published at the end of February, and based on provisions of the directive, only after 18 months after publication of RTS will take into force. So it means that probably at the end of 2019, this RTS will take into force. So At the moment, 18 months. It's not the whole truth, because we have to think about, let's say, about 6 months less, because banks are obliged to give or to have at least 6 months of testing environment available for third parties. So it means that we have only 12 months to develop all things related to API. So of course there are a lot of doubts, a lot of concerns related to the fact that banks have to open their systems to access of third parties, and this list, short list, but I think that this cybercrime, social engineering related to kind of phishing or something like this is very, very, very serious and very important thing we have to take into account, designing solutions based on open APIs. Of course, there are a lot of interpretation problems with new regulations, and of course, open banking is also about privacy, and let's say this mix or a combination of PSD2 and GDPR is, I think that it could be very, very, very hard to pass for everyone. Okay, our standard is not the only one, of course. In the Europe, we could think, of course, about the Berlin Group standardization initiative, which is one pan-European proposal. We have to remember, of course, about Open Banking UK. There is also standardization initiative in France, provided by STED, and also Slovak Banking Association released their proposal on standardization of the interface. Of course, almost each bank have some kind of projects related to PSD2, and there are also some commercial initiatives across Europe. But I think that to create a common one European standard of this kind of interface is a very hard task, and I don't know if the differences between markets are allowed to use the common interface in the whole Europe. So I can see the room for, let's say, few regional standards, but it's very important to try to find a solution which could, give to market participants possibility to reduce cost and reduce time needed to establish a secure connection with the bank. At the moment, our standard is about to be published in the first version. We just finished public consultation of the drafted specification. At the moment, we are working on remarks and comments received during consultation, and probably at the end of February or at the beginning of the March, we will publish our specification. Of course, this is only beginning of the development of the standard. We will react on changes in business environment, of course, in regulatory environment, but standard is only the document. This is the description how to do this. But of course, there are a lot of issues related to implementation of this standard, and of course, also in Poland, there is an idea to create a hub, PSD2 hub, which could be one place where more than one bank could be connected, and third parties could use this as a one-stop shop, let's say. Okay, I have to finish. Organizers asked me to to do this quicker. Here you have my contact details, and I will be at your disposal in the lobby. So we could chat about Polish API and about all issues related to PSD2 implementation. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Welcome, everybody. My name is Koray Arıkan. I'm representing KOBIL, a company you might not everybody can be aware of. We are a strong security authentication company present in this market since more than 3 decades right now. And today I will be providing our interpretation of the PSD2 regulation. Namely, as we are a security company, I will be going into the details about our interpretation in terms of security. So, brief numbers about KOBIL. As I said, we are in this business for more than 30 years, and currently we are by far the leading company in terms of financial security. We are currently working in Europe and also in Turkey, working with many of the largest financial institutions. And currently, especially in Turkey, every 1 out of 4 financial transactions and the users are relying on KOBIL security to perform their financial banking, mobile and digital banking, internet banking operations. So coming to the PSD2, so why was there a need to implement this new regulation? So as we are all aware of, there is a lot of growth in fraud. This is both in terms of technical fraud, which means hacking attempts and technical penetration attempts to the systems run by the financial institutions. And also lately, the even more growing part of it is the social engineering type of attacks, which try to completely bypass the technical precautions prevention systems in place. So this new regulation is there to enable more frictionless markets, financial market, and open up the banking and payment market for new players such as fintechs and then other non-financial institutions who are willing to establish an ecosystem with the financial institutions. And especially, of course, while doing this, while removing this friction, protection and security is always an important part of it, a vital part of it. And this same regulation has also many articles related to the protection of the end user, protection of the consumer. So what's coming new in terms of security to the PSD2? So starting with the target markets, the PSD2 is, as we all know, a European Union or European Economic Zone implemented solution, regulation, but it is not ending there. So the PSD2 is also extending its reach to other sectors like Turkey, because as it states, it covers all transactions that have at least one end of the payment in the EU, which means any financial transaction, any payment to be done between other geographies and the EU need also be compliant to PSD2. And to be compliant, of course, first things first, strong customer authentication and authorization should be there, and which will also enable open banking initiatives recently popping up all around. The fintechs willing to cooperate with the banks who are until now dominating this market. And the banks currently, as we all see, are taking mixed positions towards that. So some banks are trying to protect them from the new disruption in the market, and then some banks are more open and then trying to cooperate with these fintechs to come up with new solutions, new business models to enable them monetize this cooperation with the banks, with the fintechs. Sorry. So, discussing about how banks are reacting to this PSD2, there are, from our point of view, there are three different approaches. One is the banks trying to be in compliant with the PSD2 only, just say as the regulation states, do as the regulation states, and then nothing more. And then the banks, there are some banks who are willing to do more to monetize this PSD2, and to actually improve their position and then build new business models to support this PSD2 regulation. So starting with the minimalistic, simplest approach, so banking as a service, we call it. This regulation states that there should be strong authentication, there should be authorization, there should be secure communication, and once the bank is done with all these in compliance with the RTS articles, then it is done. So the bank can be considered as compliant with the PSD2. But it is not always enough for the bank, and then if this is the approach of the bank, eventually this new disruption, the change in the market trends will hunt them down at some place. So the next thing is, if the bank wants to do more with this PSD2, then they can come up with a bank as a platform approach, and which actually opens to the bank new business opportunities, new revenue opportunities by actually cooperating with the fintechs, cooperating with the newcomers to the market, and increase the amount of communication with the customers, because once they cooperate with these fintechs, lots of more transactions, lots of more communication with the end users will take place. And then the banks can take advantage of this communication, and if they adapt to more frequent customer exposure themselves, they can turn it in this competition, seemingly competition, into an opportunity, and then cooperate more with the account information service providers and payment initiation service providers. And as the ultimate role of a bank, as KOBIL we see it that way, they should consider themselves, and they should prepare themselves to turn into a banking as an ecosystem type of approach. So this is our motto, actually, build your own ecosystem. So with this approach, the bank actually builds an entire ecosystem with their partners. It could be fintechs, it could be non-monetary organizations, travel agencies, other hotels, and etc., etc. Once they build this ecosystem, and then once they open their APIs, open their services within this ecosystem, they will be able to improve the customer loyalty, not losing the customers, towards competition, but on the contrary, improve customer loyalty, because the customers and the users, as they have been called today, the humans, want to have not a banking service. They want to have their experience as they like it. So if the bank can build an ecosystem and provide all what can they offer and all what the user is expecting them to offer in a single ecosystem, then they will be able to turn in this competition into a new opportunity. So again, from the technical point of view, security point of view, so the regulation states that the authentication and authorization of a user should be done out of band. So there are different scenarios supporting that. For example, you can you can initiate your financial transaction at one point. It could be an internet banking portal, it could be a mobile banking portal, it could be any application or solution supported by any third-party provider. And then, I should show it this way. So, and then the bank should provide the services to actually allow the user to authorize those type of transactions. The second scenario is a different. So this is the two-device scenario. So the initiation is done at one place, and then the approval and authorization is done at another place. The second scenario stated by the PSD2 is even if it can also support one single device, which means you can initiate the transaction on one device and then approve it on the same device. In that case, the regulation states that even if you do this way, you have to make sure that the initiation of this transaction and then the approval of it should be completely independent from another. Which means you have to, you may use two different solutions, two different applications on a single device, which have different communications channels, and then support this new PSD2 regulation on a single device. And the third approach, and then from the customer experience point of view, is the best approach, we think, is embedding the security layer into the same app where the transaction is initiated from. So if you're talking about a mobile banking app, if you are talking about a payment solution or digital wallet, you initiate a transaction and then approve this transaction without exiting this application, the same solution. So from the customer point of view, all the customers are expecting this. On the technical side, it is very difficult to implement because as I said, the PSD2 states that the initiation and then authorization should be done separately. So we do have a solution for that. And so by using different communication channels on the single app, by allowing the application to communicate on, this can be called the business side, business communication, where the transactions are requested, and this is the security channel, which on which side these transactions are authorized. If you can implement such a solution, which on the logical level, not on the physical level, of course, separate these transactions from each other, then you can still be compliant according to PSD2. Because I'm mentioning this because it is very important, because this out-of-band authentication requirement is from the security point of view, is the major challenge to the banks, because currently, as we are using our financial applications, currently we log into the application, we do our transactions, sometimes we approve the transaction, sometimes not, but it is all in the single app. And this is easy because in Turkey and also currently in Europe, we are not bound with the PSD2 regulation. But once it gets into the play, once we have to be compliant with the PSD2 regulation, it will be difficult. So most of the solutions will be ending up like this. Or if you have a strong security partner, you can have the third solution without actually negatively impacting the customer experience. So this is just new information. So KOBIL solution, KOBIL security solution, has been authorized by the European, respective European authorities to be already compliant with the PSD2 regulation. So luckily, our current customers, current banks, do not need to do anything to be compliant with the PSD2 regulation. So they are already compliant. So this is all I want to say about the security part of the PSD2 regulation. Thank you all.
Thank you. So I think we may have a couple of questions, one or two questions. Anybody who wants to be the first? Any question about PSD2? The gentleman over the back.
I have a question to Maciej. Hi, I'm Irakli from Combine. What's your take on the screen scrapers? Because one of the largest providers of the banking data is Contomatic from Poland. How do you work with them? Or you don't at all?
Yeah, okay. Well, yes, Contomatic is a member of our project team. So we are cooperating. We have, well, of course, there are different approaches of the national competent authorities to the screen scraping issues. And currently in Poland, screen scraping is banned, and it is impossible to use this method. Of course, in other countries, the situation is different. But we all know that the screen scraping is still an issue related to new RTS and interpretation of this regulation. And there are no common, say, opinion on it. And EBA states that screen scraping should be banned, and European Commission not so strictly looks at this problem. So of course API as a principle doesn't use any kind of screen scraping. So we believe that using such kind of communication channel, I mean API, will allow to to avoid screen scraping in general.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Koray Bey, how do you compare the Turkish regulation to PSD2 in terms of security precautions?
The current regulation in Turkey, I know that there was a preparation to be a similar approach with the PSD2, but it is still waiting with the regulatory authority right now. So the banks in Turkey, and then the current regulation already supports strong authentication, because we are living in performing strong authentication, two-factor authentication for some time, since the very beginning almost. And then one of the major changes with PSD2 is strong authentication, but it's not ending there. So the open API problem, actually, because the PSD2, besides the authentication part, also aims to open the market to new players, as I said. And in Turkey, the banks are really kind of afraid to do something, to act towards this open API. There are some banks taking the initiative already, but most of them are just having the strategy for just wait and see until the regulatory comes up with something. And this is actually preventing us to be innovative as we used to be in the financial market in Turkey. But again, so as other speakers already said in various times, Egüven also stated the similar thing. So once you start doing something and maybe kind of be flexible towards the regulation, but do some innovation, the regulation will be coming, following afterwards.
Okay, any question? One last one. I think we're done. Thank you. Thank you for your presentations.
Okay. Thank you.